Good morning. This is Tanya coming to you again from Peddlers Den, and today we're going to look at our new blending ovals. Many of you have used the Colorbox foam blending tips, and of course they're no longer being manufactured. One of the things that made this tool unique is that it has a sharp edge. And when I would work with these, sometimes I would pounce color, sometimes I would brush color, but when I wanted thin wispies, like thin wispy clouds and skies or water ripples, I would always rotate this up on the edge. I would pick up ink on this sharp edge and I would put it down with this sharp edge, allowing me to get what I called wispies, little thin lines. So it was a really great tool. Now they're no longer being manufactured. Peddlers Den has purchased as many as they can find from distributors, from other stamp stores, and we do still have some on our website. The prices are higher than what they originally were because I had to pay more money for them. But they are there. Now, when they're gone, they're gone. So in the meantime, we've been developing what we call blending ovals. As it turns out, the oval was more affordable and less difficult to develop than the actual handle. I worked with a lot of different manufacturers to try to design and develop a handle that would work and be affordable. And at this point, we don't have an option for that. So we're still using the old Colorbox handles with our blending tips. And what we do, the blending ovals have some sort of a fiber on the back of them, and then the front is a dense foam. Now this is quite different than the Colorbox ones. We spent months testing different kinds of foams. Some of them put the ink down and moved it around much smoother and easier than others. And we decided that that was of paramount importance to us. So this one, we have found that it puts the ink down and it moves it around smoother and easier than the previous Colorbox ones. You can see that the foam is quite different. This is much more porous. This is much denser. And some of them just were too fragile. My favorite foam was just too fragile. It did not hold up well enough. Our new gray oval blending tips are middle of the road. They put the ink down, they move it around really, really well. They're, in my opinion, a little more fragile than the Colorbox ones, but because they put the ink down and move it around so much easier, I find myself not applying as much friction. So if you are historically a user of the Colorbox ones, you may want to try to modify your technique a little bit so that you can take a little bit of the friction off of these. To put them onto the Colorbox handles, we use the Scotch permanent double-sided tape. Because this has become a little bit difficult to find in a lot of stores, we actually do have it on our website now. I'll take a piece of this and I'll put it on the back of the foam, and then I'll take the Colorbox handle and I will press it. Now the tape doesn't seem to want to stick, so it's a little bit dicey getting to this point. But what's surprising is once you get to this point, it's firm. So now we have our tips on our tool. The tips are sold in cards of 10. There are 10 tips for $10. And let's just take a step backwards and take a look at the Colorbox one as opposed to ours. I'm going to pick up some ink and I'm going to spread it around here. And this is what I've got. And of course I put little or no effort into it. Now I'm going to take our tip and I'm not sure if you can really see this or not, but it's a much smoother blend. This one is a little bit granulated, and this one is smoother. Now, you can make this one smooth, and many of us do. But I think for people that have struggled with these tips, I think that you will find these tips to be a little easier to work with. So those of you that haven't ever used this technique, let's just take a step backwards and show you a little bit of what we do with it. I use a different tip for each color. So I'm going to start here on this. Now, when you have a sunset, the concentration of the light is always the most bright near the horizon line. So I like, when I can, to start, I like to insert my tip on an area where there's already a solid. And we're going to do a little bit of reflection here in the water. Now, if you have a basic knowledge of a color wheel, let's see, I need to grab the correct one. You'll know that when you overlay your colors, you get some beautiful blends. When you overlay your yellows and your pinks, you get this beautiful golden glow. So I especially like overlaying some pink with some of my yellows. You see that when I pounce, I'm just putting down a lot of ink, and then you can just kind of spread it around, thin it out. You want to use as little friction or as little pressure as possible when you do this. And here's where you can rotate it up on the edge and you can get thin little lines. Now, of course, along the shoreline, if this was a reflection, it would be darker because there would be a certain amount of shadow there. And we're going to add just a little hint of yellow in here. Go back up here, add just a little bit of a hint of yellow. Now let's move on to a deeper, this is our plum color. Now the plum has a fair amount of purple in it, and if you know anything about the color wheel, when you put purple and yellow together, you kind of get mud. So you really don't want to blend too much of the plum directly with your pink. I do want to put some here because I want to emphasize the shadow. And of course I'm trying to leave wispies because to me that suggests a certain amount of cloud pattern. And then you've got it down here. So we're starting to get some drama because we're starting to get different values. We've got some contrast. We've got the dark areas, and we've got some areas that are a little bit brighter. You want some little dark wispies coming out into the sky and into the water. Okay, so let's at this point go back and let's think about adding just a little more of the yellow. One of the hardest things to do when you're working on things like this is to leave white space. Most of us tend to want to Sorry about that. Most of us tend to want to fill up the space. And the white space is really important. It's really valuable. So that's not too bad. Now we're going to move into some gray. When you darken the edges, it tends to not only create drama, but it tends to draw the viewer in because our eyes are drawn to light. But what amazes me is when we take our granite gray and we put it over some of these other colors, the gray actually takes on a little bit of a lavender cast, which I think is really fun. The more white space you leave, the lighter, the earlier in the day it appears. So if you were going to do a sunrise instead of a sunset, you would have lots and lots of white space. If you obliterate most of your white space, it looks like it is almost dark. Now this particular tag is meant to be fast and easy. If we were working on a real masterpiece, we would want to use more colors. We would want to take a little more time and effort. But I really, my initial videos are meant for beginners. I like people to see how you can do something really nice without much effort, without much time. And then if you want to crank it up a notch, you always can. So for a quick and easy tag, I don't think this is too bad. We used our sunflower, our primrose pink, which is kind of a bright pink, our plum, and our granite gray. So thank you for joining me. Once again, I'm Tanya with Peddlers Den. You can shop our website at www.peddlersden.com. And what you've seen today is from our Makin a Scene collection. Thank you, and catch you next time.